Well, hello again, everyone. And I would like to spend the next several minutes sharing with you about the Nature RX at Cornell program. Our mission, as you can see on the screen, is to reduce stress and thereby increase both physical and mental health in students through their engagement with nature and to cultivate in students an increased appreciation of nature. The Nature RX at Cornell program started between 7 and 8 years ago, and I will be talking about the various ways in which it has developed since that time. Next. But I don't want to give the impression that programs that promote spending time in nature are a completely new thing. In fact, I recently came across a paper titled Nature RX Reemergence of a Pediatric Nature-Based Therapeutic Program from the late 19th and early 20th centuries by Michelle Kondo and colleagues. In that paper, the authors argue that programs that engaged young people with the outdoors were popular 100 plus years ago as ways to address such issues of childhood health as underweightness, contracting polio, rickets, and tuberculosis. Now, those issues mostly sound quite antiquated to us today. And in contrast, today, we're most concerned with the prevalence of obesity, high stress levels, and depression in children and youth. Next. In this same period, the nature study movement had a real heyday at Cornell. This was the early part of the 20th century. And such Cornell luminaries as Liberty Hyde Bailey, Anna Botsford Comstock, and Louise Agassiz promoted outdoor study to children around New York State. Its motto, which I just love, as penned by Agassiz, was, quote, "Study nature, not books." And I think that that was meant a little bit facetiously, but it certainly does point out the strong emphasis that these early nature educators put on the outdoors. Next, please. So returning to the Nature RX at Cornell program, one way to engage students is with a club. Members of the Nature RX Club could organize such things as weekly nature walks, natural areas cleanups, invasive plant removals, geocaching contests, and in winter, in the north, such activities as snowshoeing, sledding, and cross-country skiing. I want to talk a bit about the club at Cornell. In Dorothy's excellent presentation, she talked about trying different things and not being overly committed to efforts that don't work. I have found that maintaining a Nature RX club of students has been, at best, an uneven affair. Students are distracted by 100 different things, as I mentioned in my introductory remarks. Students graduate, students develop problems that keep them from focusing on something like a club. So this year, I think we have finally hit on a formula that I think will be successful. The officers of the club, at least the president and vice president, are graduate students in the Cornell Masters in Public Health program. And they're older students that have more of the maturity and experience. And then the additional officers are undergraduate students, and they are holding weekly walks and other activities. And I think that the combination of having graduate students in charge and having weekly activities is giving this club real momentum this year. Of course, during the pandemic, the club was essentially inactive. Next, please. A second way that we carry out the Nature RX program at Cornell is through an undergraduate Nature RX course. And some of you may recognize that individual over on the right. This is from the course back in 2019, and that's Dr. Robert Czar, the director of the Park RX program. More about him in just a bit. So I have two major objectives in running and offering this Nature RX course. The first is to expose students who are primarily first and second year students to the variety of beautiful natural and landscaped areas on and near the Cornell campus. The second objective is to use experiences outdoors every week, along with required readings and reflective essays, and as a result, have each of the students develop a more intimate and committed relationship with the natural world. For the past few years, colleagues at UC Davis and I have each offered Nature RX courses. And in both cases, in the first class, we have students complete a questionnaire about their level of involvement with nature and how they are utilizing nature to improve their overall well-being. We then have them fill out that questionnaire again during the final class of the semester to really evaluate ways in which the course has impacted their feelings and use of nature. Next, please. In a paper that was recently published in the Journal of American College Health, our colleagues at UC Davis and I revealed that students, as a result of these courses, had greater levels of comfort with nature and were more likely to go out into nature to relieve their stress levels. Next, please. We also take a pretty broad definition of nature, and here are some of the students this past Monday on a very chilly day being led on a mindful botany tour around Cornell Botanic Gardens. One last thing I'll mention about this class. In the past, I've had anywhere from 12 to 16 or 18 students sign up for the course. This year, I had to actually cut off registration at 30. And I think what that is a reflection of is the degree of stress and anxiety that students are feeling and their recognition that a course like this can help to relieve the stress. In answer to the question that was just posed in the chat, this is a plant science course which is jointly listed with an initiative at Cornell called Living Where You Learn. And that joint listing provides funding for the course, which funds our field trips. I'm also able to give each of the students a copy of Florence Williams' wonderful the Nature Fix book, which we use as a text. Next. A third component of the Nature RX at Cornell program is Nature prescriptions. And this is a good example of how each campus must carry out their Nature RX program in a way that works best for them. So earlier, Dorothy mentioned that trying to set up their prescription program through the health clinic was not successful, and she switched to the now very successful peer-to-peer Nature prescription program. At Cornell, we have actually found that working with health professionals has been a very good conduit for getting students Nature prescriptions. Next. In the early going, we modeled this on, there he is again, the wonderful Dr. Robert Czar, who really started the Nature prescription program in America and who has been the instrumental force behind the creation of Park RX America. So each student who was prescribed Nature was given a little quarter card, as you see there on the left. But then recently, next, we've been able to actually get Nature RX discussed and recommended as one of the options on the student's electronic health record. In the fall of 2019, 23 different health professionals gave out nearly 700 prescriptions to students. In addition to that, colleagues at Cornell Health had developed a survey which was sent to each of those 700 students in an anonymous and confidential manner to determine the degree to which, well, A, they remember getting a Nature RX prescription, and then B, if they did, the degree to which that was actually altering their behavior and their sense of well-being. Well, we were just gearing up to resume this program in the spring of 20, and as with so many other things, then COVID happened. So we've resumed the Nature prescription and anonymous questionnaires to students this fall, and I will be anxious to see the analysis of the data that gets collected. Next. Yet another component of our Nature RX program is our website. And both Dorothy and Jeanette talked about their interactive mapping programs that they have developed for their campuses, and those are wonderful. In our Nature RX website, naturerx.cornell.edu, we depict 17 unique natural and landscaped areas on the Cornell campus and provide both descriptions of each of those sites, as well as GPS-based directions on how to walk to the site. Next. So our real goal with the Nature RX website is to change students' mindset from one of feeling like, oh, well, I know going out in nature is good for me, but I don't have time for that, to more of a sense of nature is all around me. And if I have 10 minutes, here is a site that I can go take a break in. Next. A final component of the Nature RX program is a series of e-posters that we have developed that are now broadcast on media walls all around campus. residential halls, dining halls, the Cornell Health Facility, and various academic buildings. And the theme of the current e-posters is, did you know that time in nature? And individual posters focus on can help improve your exam scores, your sleep patterns, your social life, and your overall stress levels. And for each of these posters, we actually include citations of papers that have verified those benefits. Next. So as both Dorothy and Jeanette have very generously mentioned, I am the co-author with the late Gregory Ells of Nature RX, Improving College Student Mental Health. I'm going to go off script a bit and mention a very disturbing and yet ultimately uplifting story. Very shortly after this book was published, Dr. Ells took the position of director of the CAPS program at the University of Pennsylvania. After being in that position for just a few months, for reasons that none of us still understand, Dr. Ells took his own life. That, of course, was extremely disturbing to me and everyone close to Greg. But he was someone so committed to student health and well-being that I think it ultimately was overwhelming for him. And my takeaway from this disturbing story is that each of us must cherish every day in our lives. And as professionals working with students, we must find ways of improving their lives however we can, and particularly through nature contact. Next, please. In the Campus Nature RX book, we describe a step-by-step framework for developing a Campus Nature RX program. Earlier, Dorothy described her process, which was, by the way, much more graphically interesting than what I have to present here. But some of the steps that we have followed have been to organize an advisory committee, just as Jeanette has been doing over the past year, securing the support of the administration. And I will say that our administration has been very supportive, vocally, if not financially. Thirdly, I think it's important to inventory the green spaces on campus so that as you develop a map or website, you'll know which areas to highlight. Next. Fourth, to engage students, and I've spoken with you about our student-led Nature RX Club, its pluses and minuses, partnering with the Campus Health Center, and that's been the focus of our Nature Prescription program, developing an app, website, or map, and then measuring the program's impact. And this can be one of the most challenging ones. And I'll finish with that by saying that part of why we are so interested in having students respond to that survey about the nature prescription that they've received is that we feel that that is one bona fide way in which we can assess our program's impact. So thank you very much. I would be happy to answer one or two questions, although I know that time is moving on.